You are comfortably zoned with the Zigzag Man in Alameda, California, pushing on the doors of life marked pull and fighting the unholy trinity as we go. Big business, organized religion, and government. I am here with comedian Mean Dave. Mean Dave, how the hell are you?
I'm good. Good out here in Alameda, man.
Yeah. It's been a while. You and I were together on a project, if you want to call it that. We were podcast folk at
FCC Free Radio.
Oh.
Highly unfree radio.
Highly unfree in San Francisco, where we both got into podcasting around the same time. You're a few months ahead of me, two and a half years ago, maybe?
Yeah, no, started there in, I forget when I started. We started, I think, in September of 2011, and my show went up until it got kicked off the station for reasons that weren't related to the show, but I got basically notified that my show was terminated in the beginning. It was the end of March, beginning of April. I was supposed to be there through April, and I was going to be leaving and taking a hiatus. But then the beloved station manager of undisclosed substances, he ended up coming to me at a very awkward time and decided to tell me that my show was terminated. And it was at the same time that another show, the Miggity Mac show, was being terminated, and that was publicly known to all the people that worked there. I say worked there were clients there, and unfortunately, he informed me that my show was being terminated based on him talking to his lawyers, which he doesn't have any lawyers, which is hilarious to me. Okay. I was like, he was talking to the committee in his head. And he also has a guy on, I don't know if he's still there, but the guy who runs the Weed Show, who's a lawyer, that was his acting lawyer, who was basically, he was consulting. And for whatever reason, they kicked me off because I assume there was a lot of, I was drunk there a couple weekends. People that were drunk at FCC Free Radio, who knew that went on? I don't know if I'm pretty sure you remember, Ralph, but it seemed to be a requirement for people to have at least a fifth of Jack in some of these shows. And I had been on a couple shows where some people who, against my warnings, got me drunk and took some things the wrong way, and some of those, and basically it's funny, just like at a real job, I had a massed amount of complaints from certain members of the staff, most of them newer, who didn't understand my personality, nor the fact that, I go by a stage name, Mean Dave, but it was based on, it was something I gave myself in a band, Mean Dave and Crazy Eric. We were a band called Bad Touch, and Eric is kind of crazy, and I can be mean, but we aren't known for. I mean, and this is the stupidest thing about having a stage name like that. In wrestling, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, he's not actual granite. He's not an actual rock. Stone Cold Steve Austin, he's not actually that stone cold. He's a very warm guy. It's a character they're portraying. Why the fuck it was when I'm doing this in comedy both and in radio, you're not that mean Dave. And it's like, well, fuck off then about it. And then sure enough, it's like, you don't need to, let sleeping dogs lie as far as a name is concerned, but you will learn if you need to be that how you don't know. I always gauge like how dumb somebody was based on how quickly into knowing me they would say that. They would actually say that very thing. Well, you're not that mean. Well, it's like, normally I don't blow up a bridge before building it. You got to build that bridge first, then you set the charges, then you blow that shit sky high and have fun.
So basically what you're doing is giving the world fair warning.
Exactly. It is.
There you come.
There you go. And it can be that way, but but while being there, I got notified my show was kicked off, but nobody was told about that. And so it was funny where I was made to believe that I did something horribly wrong, which I didn't. and I found out what it was later on, and it really was not. It was somebody misinterpreted me while I was wasted, thinking that I was threatening them when I was basically telling them, no, you're dead to me. Like, you're not my friend anymore.
So let's get a little serious here and
Yeah.
talk about what you just said. While I was wasted.
While I was wasted. That's right. I got wasted a lot.
All right.
Yeah.
And those were days when you were getting wasted.
Days, years, really. I've been an active drug addict. I am an addict, but I was an active drug addict from age 15, since I probably started really using stuff more on the weekends all the time, and would be looking forward to that up until I stopped using everything exactly 90 days ago. So, and this is...
And you're very proud. We talked.
I'm proud of it to an extent.
You
Yeah.
have a little keychain thing.
I'm proud of my.
90 days.
I'm proud of today.
I told you that I am very proud
Thank
of
you,
you
thank you.
for recognizing when the time comes. A man or even a woman does what they have to do in life. And,
It's crazy. Yeah.
You got realization. Anything you want to talk about that brought you up to that point? That
It was.
a
I mean,
combination of different things.
It was a combination of different things. I knew I was heading that path, but the ultimate thing was getting in trouble, getting a second DUI that I've yet to be convicted of yet, but I will be. And I was sleeping on the floor of a very cramped Santa Rita cell, saying the Serenity Prayer that as best I remembered it from the NA meetings that my stepdad dragged me to support him when he came clean about his addiction, and I remembered those meetings having a profound effect on me, and they always stuck out in my mind as something that I may need at some point when I wanted to, if I ever wanted to jump ship of this this madness that I kind of brought. And I knew I was doing insane things, but I just didn't realize how. Once you get clarity outside of the insane things that you do, because I thought that was just something that was part of my personality that I was always going to have to live with, and grew increasingly fearful of my future as I would do so, and just assumed also that I might die as a result of some of these things. And after I had a cousin pass away in his sleep, he died of a heart attack, of an undiagnosed heart condition about 2 years ago. And that had quite an effect on me and this was also during my comedy pursuits. And he never got a chance to see me perform, but he knew I was pursuing comedy. And we had a falling out 2 years prior to his death. And just a lot of that had an effect on me because he was like, him and his brother were like my brothers growing up.
How has this clarity over the last 90 days affected your comedy?
Completely. It's really just made it sharper because I'm a type of comedian where I more or less try to mix silliness with social commentary and satire. I also tend to. I'm a huge fan of stand-up comedy from growing up. I'm not a fan of amateur, wannabe, aspiring comedy as I see it today, and even as I see a lot of professionals today that are on TV and that are really doing. I mean, I want to say that they're really going backwards, and I see a level of comedy right now that is equivalent to the 50s, ignoring the truth of things, just trying to make this pablum, pandering, clever for clever's sake, or clever and offensive for clever and offensive's sake. Nothing really saying anything when we've had comedians such as everybody from Richard Pryor to George Carlin to
George Soule,
Bill Hicks. No, there were and guys from the past too. And that's there's a lot of history in. And even just good comedy that's just for comedy's sake, such as Rodney Dangerfield and your Jerry Seinfelds, but you just don't see a level of depth to the current crop of comedians where they're just these generic imitations of each other. They're just like bad copies of one another. Yeah. And I saw. I didn't want to get into comedy. I'm a musician. I even say so on in some of my act. I say I got into comedy the way that Happy Gilmore got into golf. I thought of himself as a hockey player, and then found out he's really a golfer through circumstance and life kind of steering him in a direction of finding that out. That's sort of. I had a comedy band, or I had a band that had a thread of stand-up comedy called Bad Touch, and it was a two-piece guitar and drums duo that was really good, for what it was, and I'll be releasing some of that stuff actually on the same label my first comedy release is out on. But it when we were doing that, what was funny was my act in that band, I didn't realize I actually had constructed a comedy set within the context of having this band, because even though I consciously did tell my drummer there's going to be a thread of stand-up comedy to this band, I didn't anticipate it being as strong as it was, and we were hilarious to comedy or to music audiences, which is hard to do, and playing some good songs, and that mix. I always said it was like, it's basically like Don Rickles and Triumph the Insult Comic Dog if they were fronting a band played by John Christ and Chuck Biscuits of the old Danzig band on Black Flag's equipment. So it was insult comic rock is what I would call it, with like a real punk edge.
Hey, you mentioned Don Rickles.
Don Rickles I love, and
Don Rickles went to Newtown High School, same high school as I went to.
Oh, no kidding.
Grew up in Jackson Heights, New York.
Yep.
Went to the same high school as Carol O'Connor.
Yeah.
Played
in All in the Family,
All
right?
in the Family, that was set basically in
that area
that
That's
I
right.
grew up in.
No
Jackson
shit.
Heights, Astoria,
Right.
Queens, New York. And Don Rickles, a neighborhood guy, a hero. He's suffering recovering from some skin-eating disease.
Oh yeah, no, he's performing in Turlock too coming up. I want to go check. I might check him out if I get a chance.
I'd
But
like to do that too.
one of the things that really eats me up about, because I read his book, the Rickles book. I bought one of the things that two comedians that brought me closer to my dad. We didn't have like the best relationship growing up, but we bonded more as I got in my 20s. And but one of the things that always would kind of bring us back together was certain levels of humor. My dad was a big fan of certain body adult levels of comedy, and the guys that would always unite us were Rodney Dangerfield and Don Rickles as I got older, and I knew he loved, because he was a fan of the Rat Pack stuff, fan of he's into mob mentality kind of things. He's into mafia history and lore, even though he can't stand the sight of blood. And he works in insurance, which is they worship Jimmy Hoffa in the realm that he's at. So. Like 1 year for 1 year.
Assurance or insurance?
He works in insurance in like health and not for mafias. No, he works in actual health insurance.
Well, assure that everything goes right for you,
he works for
Dave.
Providers.
Why did they call you Mean Dave? You're such a nice guy.
Exactly. Yeah, because I'll shoot out your kneecaps. That's why.
Well, if you have to, you have to. Yeah. I understand, Dave.
No, I could stand the sight of blood a lot more than my dad could. I can tell you that much. But what's funny is he works with some I've met some very interesting characters because of his business, and because again, these are people that work with Teamsters, they work with a lot of different elements, and
we need the truck to go. It'll go. Don't worry about it. Just use my name, okay?
It's funny because one of his friends is a guy who grew up with Sam Giancana and knew Frank Sinatra, and I met this guy, and he looks like a guy who could possibly be in an episode of The Sopranos with the big ass fake wig looking haircut, and but he's a nice guy too. But also I know it's like
Frank needs some female companionship.
It's funny. I think that's his name too.
Could you round it up for us?
But it's weird because then one of the guys though that did unite me and my dad was Don Rickles, and I bought him the Rickles book for Father's Day one year, and then I also wanted to borrow it. And I borrowed it off him a little bit later, and then he said, that'll be the quickest read you ever. He said, you'll pick that up, you'll be done with it in 3 to 5 hours. And he was exactly right. Went home, read it, started at 2 a.m. and finished it at around 5, 6 a.m. Just because the chapters are so short and they're funny and poignant, and just a lot of really good Rickles. You learn a lot about Rickles, and it inspired me to have this idea for a band that was like Don Rickles in a heavy band that would talk shit to a music audience, which at the time I was in all the.
Dave, you're a hockey puck.
Oh, it's funny. That the audience is the hockey pucks, and that's where I realized I had these resentments from playing in all these bands, because I played in bands live music for like over 20 years. And I never had a band that was like my own vision. It was always I was like an added player to somebody else's thing and really enhanced it.
What could you tell our audience about show business in general?
I wish I knew.
I mean, from looking in, from the outside, people who are interested in comedy, performing. What is it that's really great about it for you? And what is it that's just horrible for you?
The fact that it's a business is what I would say is the most horrible thing about it. I don't know too much about. I've met some people that were professionals in music, and I've met some professionals in comedy. The thing about it for me that everything that I've done has been from the point of view of honest expression. Like I didn't get into these things with dreams. I mean, I was aware of stuff that, yeah, if you do something well enough, yeah, it gets noticed or whatever. But in order to do, I see a lot more both in music, or more in comedy than in music, because I was part of a scene in music where if you had intentions of really doing something with it, those intentions are obvious and people can smell it on you. And that's an intention to quote unquote make it is almost death to any band.
It should come as a surprise.
Yeah,
to you.
you
It
really
should be nice, and you should.
Well,
it's the journey is more.
It should be genuine, is what it is. Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the best bands that you've seen that have been popular, it's from the '90s on, up until the point where these bands started getting engineered American Idol style. Bands existed for like over 10 years. Your Red Hot Chili Peppers, your Pearl Jams, your Nirvanas, your Smashing Pumpkins. All these musicians were existing in maybe not the same band, but existed doing music for a long time prior to the points at which they blew up. And that's a lot of that industry. What people don't understand is that the industry has a great amount of sway over what you hear and what you don't. And scenes make themselves. I remember the band that I first concert I ever went to when I was like 12 years old. I went to go see Faith No More, but we didn't get to see Faith No More because my parents had to pick us up. And so we didn't get to stay late enough because there was only 2 bands playing. So we only saw the opening band. And that opening band was a band at the time we never even heard of. And this was in 1990, I think. That band was Primus.
Oh, wow.
And and we saw them, and this was when the demo "Suck on This" was out there, and we saw this band that was clearly just had the crowd, just hypnotized with this weird shtick and this bass heavy, slap bass band that was really unique, and didn't have any idea who they were. That summer, Frizzle Fry came out, and they started becoming more of a local phenomenon as much as they already were. And then once Sailing the Seas of Cheese came out, they then became a phenomenon, nationwide and then eventually worldwide.
And but you mentioned Rodney Dangerfield before. If you equate the same analogy, bring it to comedy. He worked under 2 or 3 different names.
Oh yeah, exactly, and quit comedy for 10 years.
Comedy,
yeah.
Sold drapes.
He sold aluminum siding. He actually was a lot of my anchor when I thought about quitting comedy, thinking like maybe this isn't for me. I watched the 2-hour A&E biography special. That just came on. My friend was telling me to check it out anyway before I even got into comedy. He said, "You're going to love it," because I already was a huge fan of his. And but this made me, whenever I felt like things were low, I looked at Rodney's I watched that thing. Not watched it every time I felt bad, but I thought about it because it really resonated.
Giving up thing.
It wasn't just giving up, but it was the fact that he genuinely loved comedy. And not just that, but he wanted so bad to perform well for people. There was a genuine love of performance of what he did for people, and that carries across. When I play music, that's what would carry across to people too, is I have a love of performing and doing something well, and not it's not that I'm like the best skilled at any instrument, but I'll put a lot of my energy into songwriting, into all whatever I maybe have a lack of in certain technical aspects, I make up with in ingenuity when it came to my bands, because I had a shit ton of bands that I love all the bands I've been in, and my rule was, because I've been in some shitty bands prior to that, my rule became, look, if I can't listen to it on my own, I don't want to be a part of it. And that was my rule that I would have, and because people would ask me to be in certain bands, I'm like, nah, I'm not feeling that vibe. It rings false to me. And I don't care how good they were. I don't care if they had, we've got this kind of people are waiting to put out. Nah, I wanted to be in a band, and most of my bands, what I noticed was consistent was these were bands that were made with my friends. That I had to really genuinely like the people that I created my craft with, and I learned a lot. And I played with a lot of different people. And played with a lot of different levels of bands, and they all of them, I still stand by them. All of them were excellent. But when I got into comedy after I started my own band, Bad Touch, there was this comedy thread definitely resonated with me because I was it was about the banter between my songs, and a lot of bands did this, but I started like having these bits and didn't realize I was doing bits that were both improv, but there was I would have some foundation in like ideas for bits,
well, if
like
you check
material,
out
I guess.
Louis Prima and some folks that
I imagine
entertained in the 50s.
Oh, I can imagine.
The lounge acts and what have you. And even Frank in the Rat Pack.
Oh, riddled with humor, completely.
Riddled. I think Dean Martin, for instance, was one of the funniest.
Completely. Oh, yeah.
With the best timing.
And he blurred that line. I mean, he was in with Jerry Lewis. I mean, you're talking about also from a time where you're talking about a time when people. When people were entertainers, then they were all around entertainers.
Right.
These people, their skill set was so deep. Right. And these were not slouches. And then we're living in an age today where somebody can get on TV from posting a YouTube video of them shitting themselves. The bar has dropped so far low, and I'm not saying like so much.
I'm just going to cross that off my list now.
Yeah, well, no, the bar is
do something to get some attention.
The bar is so low as far as how people can get people's attention, but it's not just that. It's the fact that. Right now, you have what I was saying, like the current comedy realm. You have a lot of people that are only wanting to get into anything in comedy related because they quote unquote want to be famous, and it's like, and the fact is. If you study, this would be like anybody who wants to direct movies because they want to be famous, thinking that they want to be like Tarantino, without studying what was it that made Quentin Tarantino Quentin Tarantino. Quentin Tarantino didn't just come out of nowhere and just make a few cool movies. That dude was forged in a pressure cooker of a love of film. I don't think there's anybody on this planet that loves cinema at the level that he is at. That loves cinema more than him. That dude loves movie. He eats, sleeps, and shits movies.
Well, that transcends to any line of work that somebody loves.
Yeah, if you love it.
Sports, if you're coaching, if you're in the film room, if whatever it is.
Yeah, and the funny thing about it was what got me again when I transitioned into comedy was when the band started suffering unintentionally. The drummer was sort of, I could tell, was losing interest because he also had a girlfriend. Girlfriends can ruin bands. It's boyfriends if you're an all-girl band, whatever. All relationships can be the death knell in some bands. And bands.
Yoko wasn't the only one.
Oh yeah, exactly. Bands happen and they die just as quickly. They come and go. And I played in all kinds of them, and I've developed all kinds of different projects from it. But when I saw that this band was leaving. Or was not leaving, but when the band was starting to grow stagnant, and I also was using drugs and alcohol the entire time, so I'm also kind of my own worst enemy in some of this when I probably should have put a little more effort into promoting it.
Hey, shoulda, woulda, coulda.
I don't regret it. But I regret just the fact
you had some fun.
I had fun, but it wasn't. I did honestly want to make a real go of it, but I didn't know how to. And what the fact is too, I had a drummer that wasn't willing to sacrifice as much as I was to get there. I mean, he had a day job, I had a day job, but the fact was, if it meant quitting my day job and going and do some other, I would. I don't have a partner in doing that even in this duo band, and it's not like the band is nothing's going to come find you. You have to go out and seek it out.
Right.
Well, with this kind of drive. I remember thinking to myself, I used to tell myself if I lost the use of my hands and I couldn't play music, I would probably go into stand-up comedy or something. And that always stuck out in my head. So when I ended up I was saying, you know what, maybe I'll try stand-up comedy and see about promoting the band that way. And not too long after that, my drummer ended up quitting because he couldn't stand a lot of the aspiring comics that would make up a lot of the scene. That it was just, and I love what his parting words were: "Comedians are horrible people. But you're funny, Dave." that was what he said. Because I thought he was assuming talking to me, and he goes, "No, you're funny, dude. But these people are they're horrible." And I'm all, "You're right. I do agree with you on that level." But I was stomaching it.
There are funny people coming up. Who do you think? Give me the names of a few people that you think are funny.
Not right now.
Yeah.
I mean, not to. I mean, I don't.
Be a prognosticator.
My favorite, I have like my local favorites, and then there's really right now I don't see anybody really is like going anywhere with any because a lot of it there's a huge gap between the very talented right now that are making a living that I still think some of them are good and some of them really I'm like I don't really get why they're so popular, but they are good. I'm not denying that they aren't good. and the level where I see a lot of the people, my generation, and some of the people that are a few years ahead of me, or more, where I'm like, I don't see them as being, again, these are people that are career-minded comedians. They're trying to get an end. That the fact being, again, when you looked at the entertainers that were famous, at all levels, these were people that learned to do something damn good before. It's like, and you see in the reverse now. You're seeing people that are pushing themselves, trying to become known for something they're not very good at, versus people that are looking to be excellent at something that they want to be known for. And that reverse kind of psychology, because of we live in the age of the internet with all of the phone technology and all of this, everybody's looking for shortcuts, and there are none. And the fact is that if you looked at, again, like Tarantino as a director, to use that analogy, he studied directors, not just watched their movies and thought what was cool, what wasn't. He studied their careers. He watched every single one, and he's made very careful choices based on seeing what people did at certain stages of their careers. That's why, out of very few directors, he's one of the very few directors who practically hits it out of the park almost every time. And even his one failure that in certain people's eyes is still a success, in that it's still a cult film and that was death proof in some people's eyes. But all of his films stand on their own, and they're great. And it's because I think it merits attention that he studied so closely what the people of the past did from all throughout history of cinema. And I don't think there's anybody else who's really done that as closely as he has. In comedy, I don't think there's anybody really that's demonstrated that level of intelligence in applying today to their comedy. Looking at, everybody's just racing, trying to get something. I mean, what it reminds me of is it's like a frat house of 30 dudes, and there's one wanting woman in the center of it, and everybody's trying to jam their dick in all at once. That's stand-up comedy right now. It's pathetic. No one's trying to romance any of it. Everybody's trying to they are, or they think they are, and they just follow the advice of people that they see that are doing well now. Your Dave Attell's and your who else is that? Patton Oswalt's and some of the others. But they don't go and watch and study and realize these guys. It took over 10 years for most of them, and before anything really, and anything they did under that tenure was not that good. And the fact that it's all trial and error forever. And what's funny to me is that when I was playing music in bands that weren't we were just, again, trying to have fun and sound good. And I'd always get the same notes back from a lot of people, just like, man, that's a really good band. Have you thought about doing this, that, and the other? I'm like, yeah, of course we have. But the trouble is you can't motivate an entire band to, the thing with the band is that the synchronicity, it's a combination of so many factors you cannot control for a band to even begin to possibly, quote unquote, make it. Okay?
You got so much stuff going on.
Oh, completely.
Comedy?
Yeah.
Where basically you're an actor.
Oh, I work on, yeah, I've acted before.
You've acted.
Daily life is an act, so yeah.
Your recovery,
Mm-hmm.
you got it?
My brain's even more active because of recovery.
Okay.
And it's funny too, when I transitioned again from going from music to comedy, what I didn't realize is I've been raised on stand-up comedy in a way that I don't, because I would bring up, when I first started, I was like, think that everybody had some level of knowledge of history of comedy, of like, oh yeah, this is like so-and-so. I'd bring up certain comedians. Who's that? What are you talking about? Or they may have just heard their name and like think, oh yeah, that's a comedian or whatever. There was a lot of people who were faking knowledge of comedy that didn't really have an understanding or have some. They would go to the comedy college and think that was the education, when really it's like, the comedy college should teach you. That's like learning the scales of music, but that doesn't mean you're going to be writing songs in fucking scales, bro.
Right. No one can teach one to be funny.
That's what people have said before. Yeah, people. Yeah. I think it's an instinct that is one of those. And my logic was this when I got.
Well, they could bring out what you have.
If you have anything.
Coach, if you have the talent, they'll bring it at you.
Yeah, there's some people that can't play an instrument. You can try to train them all fucking day, but they're not going to be able. What cracked me up was with comedy. My logic in comedy the fact was I was getting laughs already in this band, Bad Touch. But when I transitioned to comedy, my logic was, first off, I'm going to need a job when I'm old. And I don't know of any. I don't
know about that. One could get old and not have to have a job.
Yeah, but I don't look at it. I ain't banking on shit. Yeah, I ain't banking on shit.
Yeah.
And every one of my favorite comedians were comedians to the grave, and we're accepted. We're funny into the grave.
Burns, another one. Not only
Burns,
did he work, but he's another one who had 2 or 3 different names coming up. Was in vaudeville, didn't make it. Then he met Gracie Allen. He was very lucky to meet Gracie.
Yeah, he's a classic dude. My logic was people have been laughing at me all my life. They laugh at me when I'm not even trying to be funny. They're laughing at me. Sometimes I think it's with me. They're laughing at me or with me. Right. I might as well try and parlay and mine some of that laughter to make a job out of it.
Yeah, I assume you got laughs as a kid in high school.
I would, but not trying to, and not. I had a sense of humor. I gravitated to all the people that made me laugh in high school. And what's funny is they were some of the smartest, funniest people. Jerry Seinfeld actually made that point. He goes, I wasn't the class clown. I wasn't the funniest guy growing up, but I hung out with some very funny people who were way funnier than me. I just happen to be the guy that is trying to make a career out of it.
Glenn Hirsch, a comedian that I grew up in the same neighborhood with and has been on this microphone before.
Oh, nice.
Says exactly the same thing. We grew up, everybody was funny.
Yeah.
And those who went into it,
yeah.
A lot of them based on what they heard from the really funny guys.
I've actually used one of the jokes. I've used not many. But it's funny. The guy who was probably the funniest guy growing up with me that I grew up with. He was actually my nemesis at first in 7th grade. We were not friends, and we became friends because we developed a respect out of each other's sense of humor. But we still would always be kind of adversarial and would compete when we were making fun of each other or something like that.
You were bright. You could.
That it was an intelligent. It was really an intelligence thing,
other, right.
And we still even had that. I mean, we're kind of not talking right now because we still have that kind of level of rivalry. And he got mad at me for calling. He works for PG&E, manages engineers. He didn't even have a. He's got his college degree, I'm sure now, but he didn't have one when he started managing these people. And when they blew up San Bruno on my birthday, September 9th in 2010 or 11 or whenever it was, I talked to him not too long after that, and I said, so how's that legalized terrorist organization treating you? And he goes, what are you talking about? I said PG&E, and he goes, we're not a terrorist organization. I'm like, well, you guys are blowing people up and denying, being able to get away with it. So I'm practically not having to be held accountable for it. As far as I see it, you're a terrorist. We got into this argument that was so petty over just me making a bad joke calling PG&E a terrorist organization.
Well, you'll get back together.
Oh, I'm sure we will. But he was funny. His sense of humor, he even agreed, was very similar to that of Conan O'Brien. When I watched Conan O'Brien, I'm like, if Daryl had a talk show, this is how I see his talk show being. If he were a Harvard graduate, a tall, ginger guy, that's it. But when I watch Conan O'Brien, there's very much my friend's sensibility in that show, and it's really funny because he said, yeah, if I had a talk show, Conan O'Brien is exactly how I would do it, and it made sense to me.
You're kind of like a scout. You can see things in the entertainment business.
That's what I would say. There's instincts in what I'm interested in. Like I've seen pop trends. Like even though I don't, as much as I'm into heavy metal or I grew up on thrash metal and punk and whatever else, I've always had also another mindset in what contemporary pop artists are doing and are interested in. Pop culture. I mean, it's really just a knowledge of pop culture. I'm interested in it.
Do you watch television at all?
I was raised on it. Parents weren't able. They had to both work, so we were raised by the box like any other kid at that time.
Because I was talking to my bro, Norton bro. Best show ever.
Which one?
The Honeymooners.
Donnie, what is that? Oh, The Honeymooners. Oh yeah, my dad put me onto that show. I watched a lot of that with my dad mainly. He was a big Jackie Gleason fan.
Funny, talented
Jackie Gleason was one of those guys, yeah.
Unbelievably funny.
He was one of those guys that even in my generation, I developed an appreciation for him, and I still have one because one of my favorite movies of all time he's in, but it's not a comedy. It's The Hustler. He was a great actor in The Hustler.
One of my favorite of all time, he plays with Steve McQueen, and it's Soldier in the Rain.
Oh, no, okay.
A movie written by a guy named Goldman, who wrote The Thing of It Is, and some other really good
William Goldman or
William Goldman.
I do know that
right?
name. Yeah.
Very, very good novelist. They made this book into a movie, and Jackie Gleason and Steve McQueen playing 1950 peacetime army guys stationed in the Midwest with basically nothing to do all day.
Yeah,
Like the army was back in those pre-Vietnam.
It's like Kelly's Heroes, only Kelly's Heroes actually had a mission directive in a way.
Right.
Yeah.
And Gleason was a good actor.
Oh yeah, he's an excellent actor.
Yeah.
The Hustler's one. That's the thing, because he played. Not only that, he was a good pool player,
Right.
from what I understand. And but no, I love The Hustler because it's about the subject of The Hustler is about the very subject we're talking about in terms of entertaining, is that love. Like there's that one, the key scene in The Hustler that sort of is like the what it's all about is when he's talking with Piper Laurie, and he's sitting there and he's talking about the love of the game, and she can tell she's in love with him, and she wishes that he could have that love, for her the way that he loves this game. But then she's the one who points out to him that he's not a loser. That as much as he thinks that it's about the winning and losing of the game, she says you're not a loser. It's because you can look at this game and you see the beauty in this game. That she says all these other people, they're the losers. You are not a loser because you have that insight into it whatsoever. You have that passion, that love for it on its own.
You know what that's about in life. If you have a passion in life, if you got something going in your head like that, you can never lose.
You can't. You can find. You can. All you do is you adapt it. You have to adapt it. That's what that's what comedy, if anything. Because again, in what I wasn't prepared for when I got into doing stand up was first how again I related it to being a skater, going back to being a skater and being new at something. I hadn't been new at something in a long time, and the only way you're going to learn is just like being at a skate park you haven't been to, where even the worst skater there knows the park better than you. The only way you're going to learn is by going out there bailing and looking stupid in front of everybody. That's the only way you're going to learn, and that's stand-up comedy to me. You got to get up there, and some people, they might right off the bat start. I've seen some of these guys that start off the bat, and they can be funny right off the bat. But I almost every single time I see them when they hit their first wall, or they hit something that's a little too difficult, or they're in over their head, and the guys that I've tended to really gravitate to that are new in comedy are the people that have had to learn how, not so much how to be funny, but how to adapt what's funny about them from starting with not being funny on stage. Whether it's they didn't know how to talk to people, whether it's they didn't know how to adapt their rhythms, or just whatever it was. Yeah. The people that I've seen who have had the I want to say had the gift of starting off really strong, what they inevitably suffer from at some point is not knowing what to do when the laughter is not there. And to watch, and then you see them like it's just like Wile E. Coyote, where they're chasing, they think they got ground under them, and then at some point they realize, oh shit, there's no ground underneath, and then they fall hard. And
we're kind of running out of time.
Yeah,
I want to ask you if you'd like to pay homage to some teacher, some mentor that you had.
Oh, completely. I can totally tell you that. And I'll still answer your question about my favorite comedians.
No.
I still want to answer that.
That's not as important.
No, I know, but I still, right. I do want to give some shout-outs.
Answer then. Who do you give
my main teacher that there was one teacher named Anselmo Reese who taught me guitar. And not taught me specifically, but he taught a class at Newark Memorial. Was the last of our music program before they slowly whittled it away.
This is Newark, California.
Newark, California, and
confused, New Jersey.
Yeah, exactly. They always think so, but no, Newark, California, right by Fremont and Union City and Hayward and all that. But Newark Unified School District, there was a one-man music program named Anselmo Reese, and he was a godsend, being that he not only taught music to all the schools. At the elementary school level, and I learned how to play flute, even though I didn't want to play flute. I'd rather have played clarinet, trumpet, or trombone at that time. And when we tried out for the instruments, I'm thinking, I got a 3 and 4 chance of getting something I like. I end up playing the flute, the one instrument I don't want to, but I end up being in the group with all the girls I had crushes on playing the flute, and they weren't all that bright. So guess who's always asking me, the good student, what's going on with the flute lessons and all that. So next thing you know, I got him leaning over me and all that stuff, checking out the thing. So I had no problem playing flute, and I learned the flute.
Your basic motivator.
It was, well, at the time, I didn't get those chicks, but I mean, I'm saying it was just the fact that I was like, yeah, it could be interesting to the girls. Don't respect a good student at that time. They don't respect that until later on when you get a good job or you achieve anything. Then they'll pay attention to you. But no, it's funny because the years later, after I saw that there was a guitar class, and I always wanted to do it through junior high, but I knew it was at the high school. And the year that we used to have a high school that only was sophomore, junior, and senior, and the freshman class was still at the junior high. Well, the last year they were offering guitar was when I was a sophomore at high school, and they were bringing the freshman class there that year. So I did get a full year of guitar, and the guy who, when I walked into the class, who was teaching it was Anselmo Reese, our one-man music program from elementary school, and that's when I realized, I'm like, I'm going to know how to play guitar by the end of this year. And I always wanted to play guitar. I knew I could learn from him, and sure enough, and it was tough learning. I knew I wasn't going to be any Eddie Van Halen or anything like that, but I knew that I could learn how to play guitar to the degree that I wanted to, because the musicians that I was interested in weren't always technically the best at their instrument. They knew how to take what they knew and adapt it to and make something really grand out of it that didn't, using whether it was effects or ingenuity or just
even
whatever.
As a kid, you had a vision.
In a way, yeah, I guess so. I had visions with a lot of shit. I was a very creative kid, and still not so much as I'm a very creative adult as well as a kid.
Pick a couple of comedians.
Oh yeah, some of my favorite comedians right now that are just starting out or that have started out.
Whatever.
Some of my favorites. My favorite, he's actually on my. I have this little card that's my advertisement for my free download. His name is Christopher John. He's a very funny dude who started about 2 years ago, and he's a favorite of our local scene. A lot of people who know him, who are new in the comedy scene in the last 3 to 5 years, they know who he is, and he's a favorite. He's kind of like a Stephen Wright meets Bill Hicks. He doesn't really meet Bill Hicks, but he's like a very Stephen Wright kind of offspring type of character, where he has these very clever jokes that really kind of show a very obscure look at the world kind of thing. And he's a kid from a gypsy family that
have your attention, please.
They're telling us we're closing.
Now 4:45.
Hey, we got 15 minutes. Yeah, we got 15 minutes. We still got 15 minutes. But Christopher John is one of the guys for hey, we're trying to do a podcast here, lady.
It's a podcast.
Yes.
Found this Alameda Library.
She sounds kind of hot too, but yeah. So Christopher John is probably one of my favorites. He is one of my favorites. Also, I would say, as far as just both comedy and in my peer group, people who I'm a fan of, or there's 3 people that are like my brothers and sisters, and Christopher John's one of them. Another one who is a guy who's much newer from this past year, but has been learning like crazy. And he's sort of been my Frankenstein monster that I've like helped and coached along, and he's actually listened to my advice, and it's actually working for him. So, and that's Victor Pacheco. He's a big guy. He's a very Rodney Dangerfield-esque guy. He's like vulgar Rodney, and he from an indirect piece of advice from Tony Sparks, godfather of Bay Area comedy, when he saw a picture of him on Facebook, he saw him in his suit and his hat, and he said, "Who is that guy?" And we're like, "Oh, that's my buddy Victor Pacheco." He goes, "Whatever he's doing, tell him to keep wearing that suit, because that really is a good look for him." And ever since then, because I told him, I said, I'd listen to him if I were you. The suit works. He's a big guy, and he wears a suit like Rodney, and it works for him too. He's the guy who looks the most presentable for comedy whenever he's at any room and stuff, and he's been doing really well for a guy in learning in 1 year. And he's not the same type of comedian favorite that Christopher John is, being that Christopher John has this very he has an unassuming vulnerability about himself, so people root for him thinking he's the underdog. Plus, there's a lot of this bullshit element of our comedy scene. They want to feel like they discovered him. And it's like, yeah, dude, none of you discovered anything. Nobody. That's like you're acting like you discovered America. You didn't.
He gave us 2 names to follow.
2 names. One more was Nina G, and she's well known in our area. She's the only female stuttering comic or one of the few, or in the world, or whatever. But she's somebody who is very funny, who has a very real stutter,
Right.
that her act can come off so well that people think that her stutter is part of her act, and it is, but it's a real stutter, and she's managed to create her act around the rhythm of her stutter, so that a lot of times the rhythm of her stutter has perfect comic timing, and it's unintentional. It's just that she's developed this act that really works in with the rhythm of her stutter. And
There was a male stutterer a while back. I can't think
there
of
was
his name.
Stuttering John, but he wasn't a real stutterer, from what I understand.
Oh, wow.
He was from Howard Stern.
Howard Stern.
Yeah, because I've heard him talk many a time, and from
Well,
what
I
I
know the
understand.
dwarf was a real dwarf.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
good.
And Jeff the drunk was a real drunk. He died of alcoholism.
That would be an act. You
Yeah.
get a regular sized guy to
Yeah.
make himself into a dwarf.
Yeah,
You got problems.
that's
Hey, you'll come back?
anytime, man. I'm sure. As you can tell, I talked a lot right now. So
I think you're not shy.
I'm shy under circumstance, but let me read this off there for people. I got a free download it's available. It's my first comedy release. It's on. This is what's on the label Mortville Noise, but it's on captain3leg.bandcamp.com. That's the name of the band that I did this split with, and it's a split with Captain 3-Leg and Mean Dave. Again, that's Captain all spelled out, CAPTAIN 3 THREE leg leg.bandcamp.com, and you can download the new my split with them. It's 20 songs in 15 minutes by them, and 2 of my comedy sets, both of them equal out to 15 minutes each, so it's a 30-minute free download. And you can also find me at facebook.com/meandavesnothere. And I'm barely on fucking Twitter. I hate Twitter, but every now and then I'll go on there and just declare I hate Twitter, and I'm at Mean Dave Time there. So,
All right.
Yeah, you can find me on there, and I talk all kinds of shit on Facebook. It's a lot of fun. So, yeah, that's about that.
Beautiful. I'm going to tell you how I leave them almost every show.
How's that?
I always tell them to keep your humor dry, keep your dreams wet, keep your kids off the laps of clerics that wear dresses.
Good point.
Good to know. Makes the family run a lot better that way. And keep your kid out of military recruiting offices.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Because we got an economic draft going on. The veterans, they have no place for these people coming back. They don't have the wherewithal. Can't put the money into that. You got to be putting the money into munitions and stuff.
You're just working in legalized murder. That's all it is. It's legalized murder.
So don't have your kid be fodder for what's going on.
Fighting for Satan. So.
Fighting either for somebody's religion, basically Christianity, trying to go over there, and
I actually believe that all these people are the fucking dark side of the force. Like they believe in Lucifer, and they're trying to do all that crazy shit. But
even deeper than that goes
dumb.
the idea that we're fighting, and it's basically rich people sending poor people's kids to fight for imperialistic needs to bypass having to make an alternative gas, some alternative energy, which can be done if you take the money out of, going in and taking other people's oil and trying to bomb them down, and Halliburton gets rich.
Keep them dumb, keep them fighting, and you can always just like the great line in Great Gangs of New York, you can always hire one half of the poor to kill the other half.
Right,
so,
exactly. Keep them divided. And
the appearance of the law must be upheld, especially while it's being broken.
Exactly. Gambling here in Casablanca. Anyway, listen, Dave.
Oh, thank you, man. Thanks for letting me ramble on your show, man. I love you.
Anytime. You're always welcome. We'll meet over here at the Studio 420. At the Alameda Library. Free library. You got it.
Sexy library voices.
All right. Thanks, Dave. We'll see you next time, man.